Tonight, we delve into the legendary story of Irene, the overlooked offspring of Jesus, a semi-divine being who was not born on Mount Olympus, but emerged from the fiery and metallic depths of a mortal blacksmith's forge. His mission was to snatch the everlasting flame from Mount Olympus to rekindle the fading fires of humanity. However, his path was obstructed by daunting challenges. A three-headed guardian of the underworld, a covetous deity in winged footwear, and a storm-bringing seer who predicted only one outcome, Irene's demise. So, before getting too settled, please take a moment to show your support by liking the video and subscribing, if you appreciate content that blends mythology and enigma. Also, share with us your location and the current time in your area. Sometimes our narratives outshine slumber, while other times they merely intensify our dreams. It's now time to lower the lights, switch on some background noise, and collectively review the agenda for tonight. In the flickering forge of Mayini, where laborers crafted iron with determination and supplication, resided a female artisan whose skills rivaled those of deities. Known as Callista, she was a mortal blacksmith with a fiery spirit and a hammer that sang upon each bronze strike, creating weapons capable of slicing spears in flight and armor so flawless that tales suggested even Ares had donned her breastplates in combat. She garnered attention from the divine realm. Yet only one immortal descended. Jesus, the marginalized god of the forge, the ostracized figure from Olympus, silently observed her. Her allure was not in conventional beauty. Callista eschewed perfumes and royal attire, adorned with soot akin to war paint, and emanating scents of iron and pine smoke. However, Jesus perceived a divine quality in her craft, not her appearance. One evening, under the crimson glow of the low-hanging moon above the Aegean, Aristus quietly entered the workshop of the blacksmith. Cloaked in wisps of smoke and shadow, he brought no offerings or divine proclamations, only his silent presence. On that particular night, the forge blazed with heightened intensity, and 9 months later, a child named Arian came into the world. Arian did not cry immediately. Instead, his eyes opened, resembling glowing coals, and the fire in the forge seemed to dance in recognition of his arrival. The attending midwives were astonished. One of them murmured, "He bears the touch of the divine." Another crossed herself, while the eldest whispered, "His time here is not meant to be long." Arian exhibited exceptional growth compared to other boys. By the age of 5, he could mold iron, and by 7, he crafted his first flawless, sharp blade that felt strangely warm to the touch. He eschewed play and falsehood, exuding a profound stillness that unsettled those around him. The villagers, unable to comprehend him, labeled him as cursed, the offspring of a god without a rightful throne. Children steered clear of him, and priests declined to offer their blessings. However, Callista embraced Arian with unwavering love, imparting not only the skills to work with fire, but also the importance of treating it with reverence. Flame obeys those who listen, not those who command. She would instruct him. By the time Arian reached 16, his forge, Irians, roared ceaselessly, fashioning weapons for distant cities and monarchs he would never encounter. Yet, despite the flow of metal beneath his skilled hands, a deeper awakening stirred within him. He felt destined not to serve, but to reshape the world. In ages past, the eternal flame had been a celestial gift pilfered from the heavens, wrested into being by Prometheus in an act of defiance. It was a flame that transcended mere warmth, embodying thought, art, and creation, the essence that elevated humanity above mere beasts. However, that era of rebellion had faded, and humanity had the world had forgotten the debt owed to the gods, and as a result, the gods had forsaken mankind. This decline was gradual. Hearths that had always burned brightly now struggled to stay alight. Forests became chillier, storms grew fiercer, and crops withered prematurely. Even in the peak of summer, homes were filled with icy breath. Children huddled by cold chimneys, while elderly women prayed into lifeless ashes. While priests spoke of punishment and scholars attributed the troubles to celestial bodies, a prevailing fear emerged. Not the end of the world, but the abandonment by the gods. Indeed, atop Mount Olympus, the gods had locked away the final, true flame, preserved only in a sacred brazier untouched by mortal hands for centuries. They were hesitant to share it again, fearing a repeat of Prometheus's defiance. Their consensus was to let mankind suffer as a reminder of their place. However, not all deities were in agreement. Whispers circulated in secluded corners, hinting at a boy born of fire. Prophecies and dreams hinted at a figure named Irion, destined to wield flames and illuminate cities. Meanwhile, dying candles flickered back to life in forgotten temples at the echoes of a blacksmith's hammer. Iran, unaware of his destiny, struggled as the iron grew resistant. The forge flames dimmed and warmth ebbed away. The eyes of both ancient and silent gods turned towards Mayani, keeping a watchful gaze over the unfolding events. The divine brazier remained safeguarded at the summit of Olympus, yet the whispers of change were undeniable. A boy born of fire and sorrow, not a god, caused the ancient oracle in marble to flicker to life after an age of silence. Though Delhi was fading, its ruins still held the voice of an oracle buried deep within the mountains. When the oracle Irion arrived at the deserted temple, he found a haunting scene of neglect and decay. As he faced the blind oracle draped in violet robes, her voice foretold his fate of climbing the mountain, seizing the flame, and meeting death. Despite expecting a cryptic riddle, Irion realized this prophecy was a direct command. The oracle warned him of divine opposition and worldly obstacles, emphasizing the flame's forbidden nature and the eternal consequences of stealing it. Determined, Irion stood firm, ready to defy the gods and challenge fate for the sake of the flame. I wish to bear the cost. Following a lengthy pause, there arose laughter, not unkind, but weary. It was the sound of someone who had witnessed too many tales conclude in a similar fashion. "You already are," she murmured quietly, as the room dimmed and thunder rumbled outside. The atmosphere vibrated with an ancient instinctual energy. Abruptly, all fell silent. The oracle sank back into her chair, her mouth opening but emitting only smoke. Her prophecy had ended. Arion departed without a word, yet her vision lingered with him, in dreams, in flames, in every shadow cast by his forge. The gods had decreed, his course was set. However, even Olympus could not foresee the actions of a world in its dying throes upon regaining its fire. To ascend Olympus, one first had to earn the mountain's acknowledgement. Olympus did not yield to the untried. Rumors spoke of the mountain's base not being rock or snow, but spirit. Beneath its core lay a gate sealed by silence, protected by the most ancient terror, Cerberus, Hades' guard dog. None could pass that gate without confronting death. Arion did not doubt. He had delved into myths as deeply and warily as blacksmiths delve into heat. He understood what lay beneath Olympus's foundations. To reach the eternal flame, he must descend not symbolically, but into the very realm of the underworld. Thus, he readied himself not with armor, but with skill. For 3 days and nights, he labored over a collar, not for combat, but for submission. Crafted from obsidian, iron, and the last ember from his mother's forge, he inscribed 3 names onto it, one for each of Cerberus's heads. As he toiled, he whispered, memory, loyalty, grief. On the 4th day, he stood tall, before the entrance of a cave shrouded in darkness, believed to extend endlessly downward. The wind blew cold, but it did not cause a sharp sensation on the skin. Rather, it felt like it was scraping at his soul, carrying the scent of forgotten prayers instead of decay. Delving further into the cave, he passed by gently glowing bones in the dim light and torches that flickered to life without a visible flame until he heard it. The slow, massive breathing resembling the collective dreaming of 3 storms, Cerberus. Upon reaching a clearing, he discovered the beast slumbering on a bed of ash and bone, each of its heads twitching rhythmically. Cloaked in fur darker than void, its eyes were shut, but its ears moved slightly. Arion made no move to draw a weapon. Approaching the creature, he knelt down and extended the collar. Then, softly, he began to hum a tune, the same one his mother used to sing to him in his youth, comforting him in moments when the world seemed daunting and cruel under the night sky. As he hummed, the middle head stirred, the left one opened a single amber eye, and the right one began to snarl only to cease abruptly. They listened, and in that quietude, Arion slipped the collar onto Cerberus. The beast exhaled, and the door behind him swung open, not in fury, but in acknowledgement. Arion had confronted death, and death had acquiesced. The path leading up Olympus was not a path at all. It lacked markers, stars to light the way, offering only sheer cliffs, biting winds and murmurs originating from nowhere. Arion ascended not with surety, but with an innate sense. His mortal hands bled, his divine blood seared. The mountain opposed him at every step, and then there he was, not with a roar, not with a burst of power, but in silence. Hermes, the trickster, the messenger, the thief, standing on a ledge ahead. He was attired like a wanderer, his cloak billowing, adorned with feathers on his sandals and eyes as sharp as shattered glass. A man with a crooked grin spoke, twirling a coin in his hand. "Well," he remarked, implying you would be taller. Arion, undeterred, continued his ascent. "I am aware of your purpose," Hermes noted casually, strolling alongside effortlessly. "You aim to return fire to humans? Admirable, noble, foolish." Arion halted. "Then try to stop me." Hermes chuckled. "Halt you? Oh, no. I am not here to oppose you, but to ensure you grasp the situation. You are venturing into Olympus's core, into the god's treasury, into a narrative that does not belong to you." Arion responded, "Nevertheless, here I stand." His smile faded slightly. "You strive to rectify a balance disrupted for a reason," Hermes stated. "The flame was bestowed once, mistakenly, and now the gods safeguard it akin to a dragon safeguarding its hoard, not because it is precious, but because of its peril." Arion gazed at him. For the first time, Hermes's expression darkened. The atmosphere altered. The coin disappeared from his grasp. His wings quivered, "You believe yourself to be Prometheus," he said icily, "yet you are a mere spark compared to him." "I do not seek to become him," Arion replied. "I strive to conclude what he initiated." Hermes advanced, touching Arion's chest with 2 fingers. "Then receive my offering," he uttered. A surge of pain ensued, not physical but profound. A core in him twisted and writhed. "The fire you pursue," Hermes murmured, "will consume all that you are." He vanished. The mountain rumbled. Thunder resounded. A tempest had commenced, not of rain, but of repercussions. Undaunted, Arion continued his ascent, cursed yet resolute. Sinking into Arion's chest like frost settling in the lungs, the sensation was initially subtle. A tightening accompanied his breath, and a faint heat lingered under his skin. However, as he ascended higher, it gnawed at him more intensely. Instead of a wound, it resembled erosion, gradually stripping away parts of him, revealing something raw underneath. Mount Olympus transcended being mere terrain. It pulsated with life. Its cliffs shifted beneath his steps, while the wind howled through the ravines like ancient voices incensed by disturbance. The further he climbed, the less the world felt mortal. Trees ceased to grow, birds fell silent, and even the stars seemed to withdraw. Treacherous ledges and sheer cliffs replaced clear paths, demanding a toll with every stride. Arion bled, slipped, and nearly plummeted to his demise once, saved by a sudden surge of warmth from within. It felt as if the prophesied flame foretold by Hermes, the one meant to scorch him, had started to stir. Despite the challenges, he pressed on, reminded of extinguished fires, frigid villages, and children shivering in the dark. His mother, bearing blistered hands, persisted in kindling warmth for a world forgetting its essence. Olympus remained unforgiving, with storm clouds gathering and lightning crackling like restless deities along the ridge. Their scrutinizing gazes followed his every move, poised for his failure. Yet, it was not just the mountain resisting him, but Olympus itself. Passing weathered ruins hewn into the rocks, he encountered abandoned temples, their altars in disrepair, and forgotten gods. Statues of Athena with gouged eyes and Zeus's columns weathered by time and silence. Arion grasped a truth unspoken by others. The gods lacked power. No longer did they fear solely. Their fear encompassed the possibility of a mortal individual resurrecting the fire without seeking their consent. They worried about someone not originating from their dwelling, bearing the light that had once illuminated Olympus. Driven by this fear, they launched their most formidable attacks against him: ice, thunder, visions, and voices. However, he persisted, ascending above the clouds despite his torn hands and smoldering hearts. In the distance, not illuminated by the sun, but rather by a divine flame, he spotted it, the burning brazier eagerly awaiting his arrival. Contrary to his expectations, the peak of Olympus did not boast marble carvings or golden-clad gods as guardians. There were no trumpets, gates, or thunderous divine greetings. Only stillness and the burning flame greeted him. Nestled in a windless open space on a base of charred stone, stood the ancient-looking brazier. Its flames were eternal, radiating a white, pure, blinding, and lively light, devoid of flickers. As Arion approached, the heat did not scorch him. It rather permeated him, as if acknowledging something long lost within him. His breath hitched, and his skin tingled, as the ember, previously cursed into his heart by Hermes, pulsed like a secondary heartbeat. resonating with the flame like a missing relative. Moving closer, he experienced a momentary pause in time. He witnessed cities constructed from fire's glow, his mother's forge ablaze amidst winter's cold, civilizations flourishing and collapsing, each centered around fire, yet forgetting its essence. Additionally, he saw the consequence: Prometheus, bound to stone, enduring daily torment at the talons of a vulture. While the gods termed it justice, Arion saw it as fear donning a royal facade. Although he could retrace his steps, he pondered permitting humanity to adapt to the prevailing circumstances. In the frigid cold, he let go of the idea of fire and of him. Suddenly, a whisper in the wind uttered the name Callista, and his true identity flooded back. Grasping the flame, it consumed him. Agonizing pain surged through his being, not a sensation of burning, but of transformation. His bones fractured and remolded, his skin radiated, veins pulsing with luminosity. Falling to his knees, he let out a silent roar as the flame infused every fiber of his being, obliterating the boy to create the fire-bearer. No longer holding it, he became it. The brazier flickered, then faded, finally extinguishing. With Olympus no longer restraining the eternal flame, it had sought out a new host. Beside the vacant pedestal, Irion crumpled. Wisps of smoke curled from his fingertips, yet his eyes gleamed like daybreak. Gasping for breath, each exhalation sent a gentle warmth wafting out into the breeze, cascading down the mountain toward the world below. Embracing the fire, not for himself, but for all, Arion did not descend Olympus, but bore it within. As the flame merged with him, the mountain ceased its resistance. The winds stilled, the sky cleared, and even the ground beneath his feet seemed to respond to his presence, not in awe, but in acknowledgement. He was no intruder, but a beacon. His form blazed with celestial heat, a warmth that invigorated rather than scorched. Wherever he stepped, frost thawed, and with each breath, the cursed wind gentled. The air bore a fragrance not of smoke, but of rejuvenation and revival. Albeit burdened, his limbs trembled beneath the weight of the profound legacy he carried. The eternal flame wasn't solely fire. It embodied memory. He sensed each spark it had ever ignited, from the first primitive campfire to the torch that illuminated Athens. Arion was deeply aware of the impact of the forge that shaped Troy. He witnessed the destruction caused by its power, from burnt cities to wars fueled by stolen fire and ambition. The god's gift had always carried consequences. However, he was determined not to wield it as a weapon this time. Passing through the clouds and eerie silence, he journeyed past deteriorating statues of forgotten gods and an empty cave where Cerberus once stood guard. As if death itself made way for Arion's transformed self, he descended to the world below. In a frozen village devoid of warmth, the villagers gathered around him, not in fear, but in wonder. Arion didn't utter a word. He simply extended his hand, and a flame flickered from his fingertips, igniting the nearest hearth that quickly spread its warmth to others. This act of igniting hearths marked a return to a forgotten sense of community, gathering around fires without the need for prayers. Arion's transformation was evident. His hair gleamed like molten gold. His skin resembled cracked obsidian. He was evolving, but not vanishing. He hadn't stolen the flame. He had become it. Wherever the fire blazed, his name was whispered not in reverence, but in appreciation. Arion didn't receive a tomb, a statue, or ceremonial songs. His passing was unmarked, but he never truly disappeared. Following the resurgence of fires, mysterious events unfolded across the land. In remote villages untouched by travelers, hearths spontaneously lit. Entire forests came to life with renewed energy. After being frozen solid, flowers suddenly bloomed overnight. It was said that blacksmiths noticed their forges heating up faster. Children, shivering in the cold, informed their parents of witnessing a luminous figure beside the flame just before it ignited. Although no concrete evidence was found, everyone recounted the same tale. He walked until there was nothing left to walk with. Irian's body had transformed, with bones, blood, and voice turning into spark, smoke, and heat, all of which he selflessly gave away. The last place touched by his presence was his mother's forge, an old abandoned place where fires had long been extinguished, until a passing traveler claimed to have seen a boy hammering a glowing object at the anvil one night. Though the forge appeared empty upon a second glance, the flame burned fiercely, resembling its former self. Legend has it that the gods sensed it, as Olympus, feeling stripped of its power, quivered in silence. Despite the gods' awareness, there was no retaliation or anger from them, because they understood that Irian had not defied them with arrogance or hostility, but had simply reminded them of their purpose. Thus, the eternal flame, once monopolized by immortals, now flickered in every corner, in villages, cities, and even isolated mountain dwellings. It manifested in the warmth of shared soup, in candles placed by mournful hands, and in torches lifted by rebels seeking illumination in the shadows. And always, the name echoed softly, Arian. Some believe that when your fire inexplicably dulls, it signifies his passing. Others say that if one listens attentively to the crackling of the flame, the rhythmic sound of a hammer striking an anvil can be discerned, steady, patient, and enduring. Irian never perished. He transcended into warmth itself, not as a god, not as a hero. In the Spartan land, where combat skills were taught before speech and honor was deeply ingrained, women were as fierce as men. Among them was Leonthe, daughter of Commander Adrastos, whose name resonated through the grand halls like clashing steel. Born during a crimson eclipse with ominous omens, some believed she was touched by Ari himself. By 12, she outperformed her brothers in wrestling, and by 16, she led a successful hunting expedition in the Titus Mountains. Respected and feared, she walked the Spartan agora with confidence, commanding respect from men and triggering a mix of envy and admiration from women. Though she spoke sparingly and judiciously, her silence held power. Yet hidden within her was a softness untouched by warfare, a longing for something beyond what the Spartan code could comprehend. Tranquility, enchantment, enigma. Every full moon, she would abandon her weapons and reputation to wander alone under the stars, away from the city and its warriors, seeking solace above the Eurytus River. Bigger than Sparta, larger than swords and pride, is how she must be. The feeling ran through her veins like a silent melody, resonating somewhere within her. One evening, under a silvery sky resembling a sharpened blade's edge, she spotted it gliding gracefully across a serene pool in a concealed grove. A motionless swan gazed at her, its back shimmering under the moonlight, radiating a beauty unlike any war machine. This encounter marked the start of a new chapter in Leonthe's life, steering her away from bloodshed and conflict towards a realm that was gentler, stranger, and significantly more perilous. The grove, shielded from the usual Spartan presence, lay nestled amidst two cliffs, echoing tales older than Sparta itself, and even predating Olympus. Trees arched gracefully overhead, their moonlit branches swaying low. A tranquil lake mirrored the surroundings, on which the swan gracefully floated. Its feathers glistened like intertwined starlight, neither pure white nor gray, but something in between, gliding noiselessly like a wisp of smoke. It traversed the water without a ripple. Its elongated neck curved elegantly, as if crafted by divine hands, while its eyes, oh, those eyes, exuded not the untamed essence of an animal, but a serene awareness. Frozen at the tree line, Leonthi's training urged caution. Nothing in the natural world moved in such a manner, nor did any creature boldly confront a human like this swan did. Yet the creature made no attempt to flee. It observed her calmly, almost expectantly. With each tentative step she took, the swan would tilt its head, drawing her in closer. As she reached the water's edge, her heart beat steadily, yet attentively, hand lightly resting on the dagger secured to her thigh. Slowly and deliberately, the swan inched towards her, halting at the shallow's edge before bowing its head ever so slightly. Leonthi knelt down, reflecting on the myriad experiences she had witnessed throughout her life. She had observed the chaos of war camps ablaze, the anguished cries of battle-weary soldiers, and the tender first moments of newborn calves. Yet never had she encountered such a serene and enchanting scene. Tentatively, she extended her hand towards the swan, which welcomed her touch without resistance. The feathers beneath her fingertips felt unusually warm, as if the bird's body was infused with sunlight instead of blood. A peculiar sensation stirred within her chest, neither fear nor fascination, but a deep-seated connection that she had unknowingly yearned for. With a single blink, the swan turned away and gracefully glided back into the tranquil waters of the lake, leaving Leonth in awe, uncertain of the profound bond that had just formed between them. However, she knew with absolute certainty that it was no mere coincidence. Subsequently, during the following full moon, she returned to the grove, where the swan awaited her presence once more. This silent communion repeated itself month after month, evolving into a solemn ritual characterized by a profound sense of gravity and unspoken understanding. As autumn descended upon the hills, Leonthi no longer questioned the purpose behind these encounters. She simply trusted that the swan would be there, poised to impart its transformative influence upon her life. Time elapsed, marking the passage of seasons as leaves transitioned from green to crimson, fell to the ground, and bloomed anew, while conflicts raged in the realms below. Within the moonlit sanctuary of the grove, time seemed to halt, with only the full moons holding significance. Leonthi, once accustomed to assessing her value based on battle scars and authority, now found herself guided by a gentler, ancient force that transcended the stringent laws of Sparta. Every month she would bring offerings to the grove: ripe figs, delicate linens, intricately carved trinkets fashioned from olive wood, even though the swan never acknowledged or consumed them. Driven by an inexplicable instinct, Leonthi continued this ritual, drawn by an unseen force that compelled her to return to the swan's side. Without fail, the swan would meet her at the water's edge, bow its head in acknowledgement, and gracefully glide alongside her. Sometimes it would orbit her in a mesmerizing dance of silent connection. At times, the swan would stand beside her by the shore, exuding warmth like a hidden sun, infusing the air around it. She began to speak not as a soldier, but as a woman whose voice had never been truly heard. She shared tales of her distant father's aloofness, the void in her chest unfulfilled by victory, and the nights spent gazing at the heavens, contemplating a world beyond swords and soil. The swan remained silent, yet it listened intently. Its tranquility spoke volumes. It was a level of attention that mortals seldom bestowed upon her, different from what commanders, suitors, or friends had ever given. Gradually, she ceased feeling lonely, preparing herself meticulously before each encounter with the swan, sitting in its company for hours on end, relishing a connection like no other she had experienced in Spartan palaces or on battlefields. Despite the stories of gods assuming animal forms to ensnare mortals or punishments for loving the divine, Leonte disregarded such tales. Instead, she found solace in the perfect fit of her hand around the swan's neck, its bow in response to her quiet night songs, and its apparent reliance on her presence. In their unspoken exchange, a profound bond blossomed rooted in something ancient. Although she refrained from uttering the word even to herself, Leonthe understood the sentiment. Love. The swan was not of earthly origin. Its wings once spanned the sky. Its hands once strummed the lyre, ushering in the dawn, and its name had been revered in temples and etched in marble. Apollo, the god of light, music, and prophecy, stood silently, transformed into a swan by a curse from Zeus for speaking the truth against his father's punishments and power. This curse could only be broken if a mortal discovered his true identity. Leonthe, a warrior with a heart touched by loss and trained to be stoic, unknowingly brought hope back to Apollo by treating him with reverence and speaking to him in a way that reignited his inner fire. Despite his reluctance to reveal himself, he found solace in her presence and her unique ability to see beyond his cursed form. He silently responded to unasked questions with a tilt of his head and the stillness of his body. Little by little, against all odds, he reciprocated her love. In Sparta, solitude was valued, but not for extended periods. Leonte's absence did not go unnoticed. Once every full moon, she would escape from the barracks, the training grounds, and the watchful gaze of leaders and family. Initially, nobody questioned her actions. She was Leonthe, invincible, unyielding, the warrior whose allegiance was visible in each scar. However, Sparta thrived on order, on discipline and love. Particularly the concealed kind was an unfamiliar concept in a city founded on control. Rumors started circulating. She roams. She contributes less in discussions. Her training continues, but her strikes lack ferocity. This was accurate. Leonthea had transformed. While her movements remained precise, they were no longer malicious. Her words no longer stung, and there was a gentleness in her gaze. Occasionally, she would smile to herself at night, as if safeguarding a secret that even the gods couldn't discover. Her father was the first to notice, Commander Adrastos, a man devoid of tenderness, whose daughters were expected to lead, not succumb to emotions. One evening, he summoned her under the guise of discussing strategy. However, once the room cleared, he spoke bluntly. "What prevents you from resting?" Leonthe remained silent. His tone grew stern. "Do not forget your identity." Yet she already had, or at least the identity that Sparta had shaped. The city had engraved her in stone, but a touch of water had softened her, making her unwilling to revert to her former self. Nevertheless, Sparta observed. Once, a patrol trailed her beyond the city walls, tracking her movements toward the cliffs. They lost sight of her near the olive groves. Her skills made it impossible to tail her, but it was sufficient. Enough, too. Suspicion of birth arose in the community. Priests whispered about signs, suggesting that the moonlight carried mysterious sounds, and the lakes near Sparta were stirring abnormally. An unsettling pattern emerged, where a warrior woman vanished during each full moon. They dreaded it might be madness, or even a divine intervention. Leonthe sensed impending danger. She noticed a shift in the way people were looking at her, with eyes now lingering where they used to avert. Her previous strength in silence now left her exposed. Despite the tightening grip of fear, she continued her journey to find him. In the moonlit grove, where light caressed feathers, the noise of Sparta faded away. Rules and peril became insignificant. The only concern now was avoiding being seen. Revealing what she held in her heart would spell ruin for them both if the world found out. The night was heavy, with the moon hanging low and golden like a dying flame. Leonthe hesitated in her chamber, struggling to fasten the last clasp of her armor, sensing a shift in the air. The ground beneath her seemed to tremble subtly, hinting at secrets she was unaware of. The swan behaved differently during their last encounter, appearing restless and vigilant, its feathers bristling at the slightest breeze. It circled her twice before settling close by, its warmth now sharp instead of soothing. That evening, sleep was elusive, bringing haunting visions when it finally arrived. In a shimmering grove, she stood with her hands covered in gold dust, facing a statue that resembled both man and swan, frozen in a serene yet lifeless pose. She reached out and spoke a name she didn't know she possessed. Apollo. The statue fractured, and a voice resonated, not from above, but from within her very core. Truth will freeze what love has kindled, it echoed. Gasping for breath, heart pounding, the name lingered on her lips. She tried to dismiss it as just a dream, nothing more. Warriors can discern genuine fear, and the foreboding they faced was far from ordinary. It was a prophecy. The following day, Leonthe departed Sparta earlier than usual, feeling an increasing ache in her chest with every step. Instead of her usual route, she instinctively navigated towards the hills, traversing unfamiliar paths under unseen trees and into untouched groves. Amidst a veil of ivy and moss, she stumbled upon an aged altar, cracked and adorned with a single, unmistakable inscription, etched in fading gold. Apollon. Her breath caught as realization dawned on her. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The warmth of the swan, its attentive gaze, the recurring dreams, the cursed essence in her veins, and the reason for its appearance during the full moon. The swan was not merely under a spell, it was a deity, her deity, and she had disrupted something sacred. Recoiling, she heard the rustle of feathers behind her. The swan trailed her, silent as ever, yet its stillness no longer offered solace. Its gaze, now sorrowful and gentle, seemed to foreknow the unfolding truth and impending conclusion. The once tranquil grove turned restless. The atmosphere thickened, reminiscent of an ancient entity awakening from slumber. Moonlight danced on the lake's surface, and the trees stood witness to the disclosure of a concealed truth that spanned generations. Leonthe stood immobilized before the altar, the name Apollo reverberating in her mind like a resounding impact. She tentatively turned, hoping to undo the revealed truth, but it was irreversible. The swan stood there, not gliding gracefully as before, but stationed, observing. Its once radiant feathers now dull, flickering like a waning flame. Leonthi approached, uncertainty hanging in the air, her lips poised to speak, unsure if any words would suffice. In a moment, she softly admitted, "I acknowledge." The breeze ceased, and a lone feather descended from the swan's plumage, descending slowly and noiselessly before disintegrating into nothing the second it grazed the altar. Then the transformation commenced. The swan's curved neck, not with elegance but in anguish, shook. Its feathers unwound into streams of gold and radiance. Wings morphed into arms, webbed feet divided into toes that rooted into the ground, revealing in place of the swan a man, naked, brilliant, shattered, Apollo. His hair gleamed reminiscent of the dawn sky. His skin emitted a faint glow, resembling embers beneath marble. Yet his eyes were clouded by grief, by fate. Leonthi withdrew, hand hovering over her mouth. She had cherished him quietly, and now the silence had become unbearable. Attempting to speak, but hindered by the lingering curse, his voice rumbled like thunder in an ancient storm. "You were not meant to know," he eventually uttered, voice barely more than a whisper on the wind. It was the sole decree. Beside him, she sank to her knees, tears carving down her warrior's countenance like rivers through stone. "The first did not intend to," she murmured. He then offered a single smile, a god's grin, devoid of happiness, but of parting. "I understand." And with that, the earth beneath them trembled. A silent quake, a divine judgment delivered without mercy. His brilliance faded, his flesh solidified, his limbs froze midway in motion. Apollo was solidifying into stone, and Leonthi could merely observe as love transitioned into myth. As soon as the name was spoken, the curse initiated its final transformation. Apollo's body, once fluid with divinity, now stiffened gradually. The radiance beneath his skin dimmed like cooling metal. His gilt hair lost its sheen, hardening into marble strands as the phase of Zeus's punishment became evident, with no room for forgiveness or respite. Leonthi held his hands, still warm and trembling, yet she sensed the stone creeping over him, chilling his flesh. His fingers tightened around hers one last time, before becoming still. Shaking her head, she refused to accept this as the end. However, the curse remained indifferent. It had endured centuries silently, displaying patience and cruelty. Apollo's chest rose briefly before ceasing, his wings frozen in mid-fold behind his shoulders. His knees remained bent in sorrow, frozen in position, while his face, still displaying beauty and kindness, reflected a mixture of love and pain. Though his eyes were open, they lacked perception. Then, a profound silence enveloped them, deeper than any battlefield or moment before a battle charge. It was not a peaceful silence, but one filled with loss and the shattering of something sacred. Leonthi knelt with her forehead against his now cold hand, once cradler of stars, now turned to stone. Her tears streamed down his marble fingers, falling to the ground slowly and steadily like a funeral procession. The grove darkened. Even the usually bright and watchful moon seemed obscured by clouds. No lightning struck. No god intervened as the punishment had been carried out. Zeus had made his decree. The swan had taken its final flight. Apollo, the god of light, now stood as a statue of silence, forever frozen in the moment of his ultimate truth. Leonthi remained there long after the transformation was complete, embracing what remained of him. She uttered no screams, directed no curses at the heavens. There were no Spartans to hear her lament, no warriors to witness the scene, only the wind, the trees, and the stone effigy of a god. Once, her love for Leonthe was not fiery, but calm. Now, in silence, Leonthe never returned to Sparta. She abandoned her armor by the altar, set aside her sword, and let her warrior persona fade like smoke above the lake. Once a prominent figure among kings, she now knelt quietly next to a statue that would never move again. The grove became her sole world. Every full moon she faithfully visited, never skipping a single one. She brought no offerings, incense, or prayers, only herself and memories. Beside Apollo's statue she would sit, occasionally speaking or humming a song unfamiliar to him, but strangely familiar to both. Sometimes she simply observed the water in silence. Villagers started to gossip about a woman haunting the hills, roaming under the moon with eyes resembling distant stars. Some speculated she had lost her sanity, while others believed she had been chosen. Nevertheless, no one dared to disturb her. Time passed. Seasons changed, empires rose and fell, gods remained silent. Yet Leonthe stayed. She aged gracefully, her resilience akin to the steadfast roots of an olive tree weathering storms year after year. The statue of Apollo, with wings half-formed and an unwavering gaze towards where Leonthe always sat, remained unchanged in marble, immune to time. Some travelers mentioned feeling warmth when touching the stone, sensing a faint heartbeat as if it were from a dream. And then, on a final full moon, Leonthe came and sat down. She stayed by his side longer than usual, resting her head gently on his shoulder, and remained motionless thereafter. When the villagers arrived weeks later, they discovered her there, calm, with closed eyes and a faint smile on her lips. Nearby, the statue of Apollo softly shimmered as if illuminated from within. No one dared touch it. They did not construct any shrine or temple. However, the tale spread, and now, during full moons and quiet winds, some claim the swan returns to the lake, not to be seen, but to recollect. Melanian's birth did not take place in a palace, or amidst the fragrance of temples. He entered the world under a willow tree during a storm that tore through the sky. His mother, a midwife's daughter, wrapped him in linen as thunder boomed across the hills. Birds scattered, rain danced, yet the child remained silent. He hummed as soon as he could walk. Music trailed him wherever he went. Streams whispered melodies when he stooped to drink. Leaves rustled in harmony as he passed by. Training was unnecessary. Sound was his domain. By age 10, he could replicate any bird's call and blend it into a song. At 16, his lyre playing was so graceful that even seasoned warriors halted to listen. He sang of rivers, of lost siblings, of lands before battles, songs that brought tears to men's eyes they didn't realize they had. They hailed him as a blessing, a wonder, a child of divine essence. He never asserted this. Melanian journeyed from one village to another, offering his music without seeking payment or praise. His voice soothed illnesses. His melodies softened calloused hearts. Once, he performed for a dying child who, upon hearing his lullaby, smiled and slipped into death, as if drifting into a dream. But not all who listened were mortal. One evening in spring, a man was seated next to a shimmering river, strumming a melody that spoke of starlight, when the atmosphere shifted around him. The breeze calmed, the water became still, and even the frogs halted their croaking. Suddenly, the Muses appeared, 9 ethereal beings emerging gracefully from the unseen realm, enveloped in light and music, each embodying a distinct essence like history, tragedy, dance, and heroic poetry. Their gazes were not harsh nor gentle, but wise. As they listened to the man's amazement, they responded with a harmonious song, ancient beyond words. Closing his eyes, the man, named Melanian, instinctively joined in, his voice not echoing theirs, but transforming them. When the final note faded, the stars seemed within reach. Kali, the eldest and most serious muse, touched his forehead and declared, "You are not ordinary. You are a vessel." And so began Melanian's saga, the bard whose singing could move the heavens. Since that eventful night, Melanian was no longer merely a talented mortal. He had been selected, marked, and whispered about by the Muses. In the peaceful recesses of Mount Hell, where few ventured, they welcomed him into their sacred circle. There, surrounded by ancient trees and skies free from mortal desires, Melanian absorbed their teachings not through formal instruction, but by immersing himself in their world. Kolai, the muse of epics, instructed him in shaping stories into music. Cleo filled his dreams with the histories of nations as he slumbered. Terpsora danced gracefully among the leaves while he played, his fingers learning the interplay of wind and movement. Utti placed a flute in his hand and simply said, "Listen," and he did, absorbing not just tunes, but profound truths that dwelled between the lines, insights rarely glimpsed by mortal eyes. The Muses bestowed upon Melanian not power, but a new perspective, which he recognized in moments like the calm before a storm, the ache of yearning, or the wonder in a child's gasp at snowfall. They only required one thing from him in return: to sing for mortals who were lost, weary, proud, and broken. Those who needed to be reminded that beauty still existed even amidst suffering. His songs had the power to heal broken hearts, ignite revolutions, mend relationships, and bring about peace among enemies. However, as his talent expanded, so did his ambition. He began to seek out new sounds and notes beyond what the Muses had taught him. Secretly, he composed a final, extraordinary song in solitude, desiring to surpass the divine rather than share in it. The Muses noticed his change in demeanor, realizing that he no longer sought their approval, but something greater. Sensing a shift in destiny, Melanian distanced himself from the world, abandoning fame, requests, and even the Muses themselves. Rumors spread of his illness or demise, but the truth was he had retreated to the secluded slopes of Mount Helicon, beyond mortal reach. In an untouched place, resonating with the whispers of ancient deities, Melanian ventured where few had tread. Deep within a cavern, adorned with shimmering crystals, harmonizing under the caress of light, he commenced the creation of his ultimate melody. The composition arrived to him in fragments, gifted through dreams, thunderstorms, and unnerving silences. Melanian did not craft it. He unearthed it, as if it were a hidden truth concealed within the fabric of existence. The tune refused to remain static, morphing with every breath and heartbeat, embodying cosmic beginnings and collapses. It was not a performance piece, but rather an embodiment of truth through sound, symbolizing the birth of stars and the downfall of empires. Day in and day out, he toiled within the depths of the cave, deprived of food and rest, emotions fluctuating wildly as the music flowed through his very essence. Upon its completion, the world halted in awe. nature paused, celestial beings stirred, and even the fates themselves halted their eternal weaving to listen. The song did not seek adoration nor yearn for affection. It merely bared the universe's secrets. As the final note dissolved into silence, a profound stillness enveloped the space, signaling that the melody was not meant to be echoed, as if echoing it would defy the natural order. Despite the expectations of gods and muses for Melanion to share his creation with the world, he chose to conceal it instead. By releasing his creation into the world, he initiated a new melody, characterized by quietness and repercussions. The moment Melanion emerged from the cavern, the expanse of the world seemed diminished. The vast skies paled in comparison to the lingering echoes of the tune resonating within him. Upon his return, individuals rushed to greet him, musicians, poets, and even priests, pleading to experience the influence that had stirred the heavens. However, Melanion remained silent. Despite repeated inquiries, he merely offered a faint smile, indicating it was not yet time. Only the muses detected the change, emerging one evening from the starlight like a breeze from a lyre. Their attire exuded inspiration, yet their gazes conveyed a cautionary message. Erato expressed softly and sadly, "You were chosen to carry beauty," while Cleo added, "But beauty is not meant to be hidden." And Calliope whispered, "You must sing it." Bowing his head, Melanion replied, "I will not allow it to be devalued." Their reaction resembled recoiling from a blow as they asked, "Do you believe mortals are undeserving? Do you consider yourself the sole guardian?" Meeting their gaze, he responded not with anger, but with a steely resolve. They fell silent, and Calliope declared, "Then you are no longer under our guidance, not for surpassing us, but for withholding it." He remained silent, and they vanished. Yet the deities lingered. Even Zeus paused his thunderous activities to listen, and Hades tilted his head from the depths. They awaited a single note, a whisper, or a fragment. All in vain. Melanion retained the melody locked within himself, neither written, recorded, nor shared. He deemed it sacred, yet he knew that when preserved for too long, sacred things can turn bitter. Although he continued to perform other compositions that were still captivating, evoking tears and applause from audiences, he and the gods understood the truth. Divinity was lacking. Not only that, but something had also disappeared. The melody that possessed the power to influence destinies, manipulate time, and reach the deities themselves had been concealed by his vanity. He convinced himself he was safeguarding it, yet the muses, observing from a distance, recognized the reality. He had shackled the divine to his pride. The gods, who withstand insanity, warfare, and adoration without flinching, do not tolerate thievery. Thus, on a particular night, the wind grew calm. The stars fell silent, and a curse started to take root. It didn't emerge with flames, but with memories. The curse emerged gently. No thunder, no divine rage from Olympus, just a dream. Melanion lay under the vast sky, embraced by the same stillness he once cherished. Slumber guided him into darkness, and there, awaiting him, was the melody, the ultimate one. It resurfaced, clearer, more profound, unbelievably flawless. He detected tones he had never composed, harmonies he had yet to fathom. It carried him across stars, plunged him into seas, unraveled the very essence of significance. He cried with joy, with reverence, with surrender. And then morning vanished, not faded, erased, no recollection, not a single note, not even a name. The tune he had crafted with his spirit, felt in his very core, had dissipated like mist at daybreak. Initially, he believed it was a cruel illusion of sleep. He seized his instrument and attempted to recollect even a single chord. Nothing. He strummed frantically, off pitch, desperate in vain. That evening, he retired to his bed early, heart racing, and the melody resurfaced, more brilliant than before. In the dream, he sang along, tears flowing, fingers twirling in the light. It seemed real. He could recall it within the dream. But yet again, at the break of dawn, Melanian began keeping candles burning all night, jotting down notes in the darkness. He implored his soul. Striving to hold on to a specific phrase, a rhythm, or a singular image proved futile for him. Despite his persistent efforts, it continued to slip away repeatedly. Ultimately, he ceased playing and declined to showcase his talent. As a result, the crowds dispersed, and his friends deserted him. His dwelling became neglected and uninviting, yet these changes did not concern him. He was fixated solely on remembering the elusive song. The muses observed from afar, filled with sadness. Euterpe remarked that he had been bestowed a gift, but opted to confine it. Polyhymnia noted that he would be the sole listener, while Clio whispered that he would never recollect it. There was no malice. It was merely restoring equilibrium. Melanian would forever hear the song every night, yet it would solely exist in dreams. At daybreak, it would slip from his grasp like water through creviced hands. He would persist in pursuing it, clinging to hope that would eventually decay into madness. For what tortures a bard, more than forgetting their most magnificent composition, knowing it reverberates without them? Melanian disregarded tallying the endless nights that melded into one another, a ceaseless cycle of euphoria and sorrow. Each night, he descended into dreams where the ultimate melody enveloped him, like a long-lost lover. However, every morning he awoke alone, overcome with screams and tears. Initially, he endeavored to outsmart the curse by employing scribes to rest beside him, and beseeching seers to extract fragments from his thoughts. He sang to mirrors, yearning for his own voice to betray a hidden remembrance. Alas, none of these attempts yielded results, causing his mental state to deteriorate. He forewent sustenance, his attire hanging off his emaciated frame. His trembling fingers could no longer pluck his lyre, an instrument he had once cradled like a cherished possession. The strings broke under his unsteady touch, but he made no effort to repair them. His dependence on them had diminished. In slumber, the music persisted, becoming his sole purpose and the only place where he felt complete. Waking up felt like a punishment as he cursed the sun, broke his windows, and isolated himself in a lightless room. Despite his efforts, the melody vanished each morning. Upon re-emerging, he no longer resembled a bard, but a disheveled figure with a voice worn down from sleepless nights. Traveling from town to town like a beggar, he sought not money but memories, asking strangers if they had heard the endless song that haunted him. Initially met with skepticism, then fear, he sang in the streets nonsensical fragments that were meaningful only to him. Each night, the song returned just beyond his grasp, observed by muses not in anger, but in sorrow for what he had become. Once their greatest conduit, he now overflowed in solitude. The cherished song that he clung to ultimately led to his undoing, not through destruction, but through silence. Melanian existed in the world physically, but his mind dwelled elsewhere, enchanted by a melody that slipped away when sought, aimlessly wandering through cities that had once revered him. Now he was shunned by those who used to admire him. Once revered, his name became a cautionary tale. Avoid Melanian's fate. He found shelter wherever he could, be it under trees, in deserted chapels, or sometimes in doorways of inns whose owners once sought his presence, no longer seeking sustenance, only a place to rest and the elusive dream. The curse never faltered. Each night he drifted off with fragile hope, only to awaken to forgetting each morning. The cruelty lay not in the silence, but in the echoes of past sounds, recalling a transcendent melody that had once held immense significance, yet now forgotten its essence, communicating with shadows, trees, and stars, occasionally singing to strangers, yearning for someone to reply with the hidden tune, pursuing a fleeting memory of a child's humming, trailing a family across villages, collapsing in desperation for a repeat performance that proved to be ordinary. Mourning the loss, he attempted to capture the melody in his dreams, but the curse thwarted his efforts. He remained trapped in the dream, unable to document, transcribe, or retain the melody, only able to listen. Upon waking, only emptiness awaited him. Witnesses claimed he hummed in his slumber, a unique melody only discernible in darkness, as the muses deserted him and the gods averted their gaze. Melanian, once the world's voice, now wandered as a faint echo of a forgotten tune. Melanian had lost all recollection and could no longer erase memories. His figure had slimmed like dusk. His once radiant skin was now pale and delicate as paper, and his voice, barely audible, was hoarse from years of soft utterances. He no longer sought sustenance, shelter, or even the melody. Instead, he aimlessly roamed. As twilight fell, he arrived at a seaside cliff. The setting was serene, with no towns, roads, or prying eyes, only the wind, the ocean's waves, and the stars gradually emerging in the darkening sky. Nestled against a rock, he sat, the sea breeze tousling his remaining hair. He didn't cry or sing, but merely closed his eyes. In that moment, the recurring dream revisited him, yet this time a change was evident. No longer did he struggle to grasp the melody. It was clear and present from the start, resonating as not just a sound but a tangible world crafted from music. Standing amid it, he felt the ground beneath him sway like soft grass, stars twinkling in synchrony above. The firmament sang in unity, and he, too, became part of this melodic realm. As he lent his voice to the song, it didn't falter or fade away. It soared. Every lost note and mourned phrase became comprehensible in that moment. The essence of the song had never deserted him, but had evolved beyond his reach. He wasn't its master, but merely an observer. In this ultimate dream, there was no grief, regret, or retribution, only liberation. When dawn broke, Melanian remained unmoving, enveloped by the gentle caress of the wind. Melanian took his final breath and was discovered by a shepherd near the cliffs, appearing peaceful, with his hands placed on his chest, as if cradling an unseen harp. There was no scroll or recording found. Instead, above him, seabirds flew in peculiar formations in the coastal sky, almost as if they were dancing to a hidden tune. The sea briefly sang in a language older than words or melody, reflective of what he had transformed into. Melanian was laid to rest beneath a solitary olive tree, close to where he last slept on the cliff, without elaborate ceremonies, only with the shepherd who found him, and a few villagers who recalled the tales of the bard who had once captivated the gods. There was no grand memorial, just quietness. Yet, silence has a way of magnifying truths. Over time, peculiar stories circulated throughout the region. Travelers spoke of hearing a haunting melody on the wind when passing by the cliff during a new moon. It was a fleeting, bittersweet sound. Children started to dream of unfamiliar music. Musicians awoke in tears at night without understanding why. Sometimes, when a lone bard played at dusk without an audience, a perfect chord would materialize under their fingers, a composition not their own. This inexplicable occurrence was never recalled with sorrow. The musers remained silent, refraining from condemning another bard or attempting to reclaim the unearthly song because they comprehended who Melanian had evolved into. He was not a cautionary tale or a hero, but a vessel turned into a legendary figure. His punishment was not of malice, but of denial, and his redemption was not found in sharing, but in surrender. The ultimate composition was never documented, nor was it ever showcased in arenas or sacred places. It doesn't have a presence in any written form or religious text. Nevertheless, it exists within the tranquil moments between slumber and consciousness, in the stillness before a musician plucks their initial note. In the manner, the ocean resonates uniquely when sorrowful. Melanian melody integrated itself into the fabric of existence, not meant to be recalled, but to be sensed. A murmur in one's core, a tune devoid of lyrics. Those who perceive it, even momentarily, never fail to remember the tranquility that ensues. It is said that under specific circumstances, if one stands alone on a particular cliff on an isolated night with no onlookers, and if the breeze is gentle, they might catch a sound that seems out of place in this realm. Just a snippet, merely a whisper. And perhaps by paying close attention, one could eventually comprehend why Millennium never relinquished it.